Is the World Economic Forum truly serving the global interests, or is it just a platform for the elites? This question has been at the heart of debates regarding the World Economic Forum, an annual gathering of business magnates, political leaders, and societal visionaries. While the forum aims to foster dialogue on pressing global issues, it has come under scrutiny for various reasons. A significant point of criticism is the forum's perceived elitism and exclusivity. Critics argue that the high-profile meetings in Davos alienate the very populations these leaders serve. Then, there's the concern about a lack of transparency and democratic accountability stemming from the private nature of many WEF discussions. The forum's influence over global governance and its alleged prioritization of corporate interests over public ones also raise eyebrows. Lastly, the environmental impact of the WEF's annual meeting and its approach to global challenges have been questioned. Let's delve deeper into these criticisms and shed light on the reality of the World Economic Forum. What do the world's most powerful leaders and celebrities have in common? They all gather at Davos. Yes, the World Economic Forum, or WEF, is well known for convening the world's movers and shakers in the Swiss town of Davos. But this gathering has not been without its critics. Many argue that the exclusivity and high cost of attendance are emblematic of a form of elitism that separates these influential figures from the populations they serve. Picture this: CEOs mingling with world leaders, A-list celebrities in conversation with influential philanthropists. These are the attendees of the WEF's meetings, a veritable who's who of global power. But in this exclusive gathering, where is the representation for the average person? Are these meetings truly in touch with the needs and concerns of the broader population? The critics would argue otherwise. Does this exclusivity make the World Economic Forum out of touch with the needs and concerns of the general population? Let's consider this. Behind closed doors, the world's most powerful leaders discuss global issues. But who holds them accountable? The World Economic Forum, known for its private discussions, has become a focal point of criticism. Its closed-door meetings, where influential individuals and organizations deliberate on global policy directions, have raised eyebrows. Critics express concern over the lack of transparency and democratic accountability. They argue that decisions with worldwide implications are influenced by a select few without sufficient public oversight. This, they fear, could result in an imbalance, with the scales tipped in favor of a handful of power players, leaving the rest of the world in the dark. This lack of transparency also stokes fears about the sidelining of the democratic process. Are these discussions, shrouded in secrecy, undermining the very principles of democracy? Are the voices of the people being drowned out in the echo chambers of the elite? The question then arises, is the democratic process being sidelined? Is the WEF a puppet master pulling the strings of global governance? This isn't just a question posed by conspiracy theorists, but a serious concern raised by critics and observers of the World Economic Forum. The WEF has the ability to convene influential leaders and shape discussions on global issues, which can lead to significant, unchecked influence over global governance. This influence isn't inherently negative, but it becomes problematic when the forum's priorities do not align with broader public interests. Critics argue that the WEF has a tendency to prioritize corporate interests, often to the detriment of public ones. The forum's funding model, which relies heavily on partnerships with multinational corporations, exacerbates these concerns. Let's consider climate change, a global issue that requires urgent attention and action. Critics have pointed out that discussions at the WEF often focus on technological solutions and market-based approaches, rather than addressing the systemic changes needed to tackle this crisis. This, they argue, reflects a prioritization of corporate interests, which often favor profit-driven solutions over the urgent need for systemic change. The same can be said about economic inequality, another pressing global issue. The WEF has been criticized for promoting neoliberal economic policies, which many argue have contributed to increasing wealth and income disparities. Again, critics see this as a reflection of the forum's alignment with corporate interests at the expense of broader societal concerns. Furthermore, the closed-door nature of many WEF discussions raises concerns about transparency and accountability. Critics worry that decisions affecting global policy and economic directions may be influenced by a select group of individuals and organizations without sufficient public oversight or input. This, they argue, potentially sidelines the democratic process and further empowers corporate interests. In essence, the WEF's influence over global governance and its perceived prioritization of corporate interests over public ones raise important questions about the role and impact of such forums in addressing global challenges. Are corporate interests taking precedence over global challenges? It's a question worth pondering. The WEF discusses climate change, but what about its own carbon footprint? A question that has been raised often, and rightly so. The annual congregation in Davos, as grand as it may be, doesn't escape criticism when it comes to its environmental impact. The carbon emissions associated with the travel of attendees from all corners of the globe are significant. This raises eyebrows, considering the forum's stated commitment to addressing environmental challenges. Moreover, while the forum deliberates on critical issues like climate change and inequality, there's a growing concern about the lack of actual commitments to meaningful change. The discussions are rich, the intentions seemingly noble, but where is the tangible action? The world needs more than words. It needs definitive steps towards resolution. This gap between discourse and action is a point of contention for critics who argue that the WEF's efforts often fall short of their promises. The WEF talks the talk, but does it walk the walk? Amidst these criticisms, the WEF is not sitting idle. The forum has made strides to include a wider range of voices, extending invitations to young leaders, social entrepreneurs, and activists. They've recognized that the solution to global problems lies not in the boardrooms of multinational corporations alone, but in the ideas and innovations of the many. In addition, the WEF has shown an understanding of the environmental impact of its annual meetings and has launched initiatives aimed at improving sustainability. They've started to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. But these are just the first steps on a long road to change. Efforts to increase transparency and accountability are ongoing. The forum is beginning to open its doors, but the question of whether it's enough remains. The question remains, is the World Economic Forum a force for good, or is it a platform for the elites? The answer, as with many things, is not black and white.